Welcome to the Sportswoman Show. I'm your host, Gabby Hoffman. From gator hunting in the swamps of Florida to fly fishing in the cold water streams of the Mountain West, join us as we explore real human stories of women, from influencers to scientists to policymakers who are spending their lives in the outdoors. Let's begin. Audrey, thank you so much for joining the Sportswoman Show. It's great to have you on.
Hi, so happy to be here. I love what this promotes, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Do you consider yourself a sportswoman, and did you always have a love of the great outdoors?
Oh, I had a love for the great outdoors since I was, a little kid. I grew up the way that most people do, in the hunting and fishing world, which is with my dad. He took me out, taught me everything I know about the great outdoors, taught me, how to love wildlife, but also harvest it for consumption, and how important the outdoor spaces that we peruse in day to day are to us, and how we should keep those spaces alive. I would consider myself a sportswoman. I think that's a title that kind of intimidates a lot of women in the outdoor spaces. You know, everyone everyone likes to call themselves an outdoorsman, but when you call yourself an outdoors woman, it brings on a different meaning. People are a little afraid of the masculinity that title brings, but I bear it with honor.
And what type of hunting or fishing activities did you grow up with?
Oh, I grew up catfishing, fishing for catfish, in South Texas. Like a lot of stink bait, a lot of pieces of chicken just flung into nasty water to pull out, big old catfish to fry on Sunday nights. I also grew up hunting whitetail under a feeder. Eventually, that became a little tedious and a little boring for me. I'm not gonna lie. So I branched out and started archery hunting for elk in Colorado. And I think that that's really where my love for the outdoors and love for the sport began to flourish. You kind of, find beauty in the pain when it comes to backpacking in Western country. And I fell in love with it. So,
I just actually got my first bow. I got a compound bow, a Mission by Matthews, slightly used in mint condition. So that's something I'm still learning how to do. So maybe I'll come back to you for pointers later on. But really, yeah, I think everyone, especially women, have a similar story. Like you, my dad taught me how to fish, and then it was a gateway into shooting sports and hunting. And it's funny, I actually taught my dad how to hunt recently, so it's kind of full circle moment with respect to that. But yes, I feel like a lot of women follow that same kind of pattern when it comes to learning about the outdoors. But I've also learned recently that women are actually the facilitators of taking their kids fishing, and I think even hunting too, to an extent. But I heard that more and more women and are starting to lead in terms of mentoring and teaching. So it's kind of closing the gap with that.
no, that's great. I love to hear that. I've never looked at stats for that. But kind of exiting that patriarchal line into a matriarchal line would be amazing.
And you got to do a lot of conservation work before you started to work with Remington, correct? Like you studied wildlife conservation, you went to land grant schools. I would love you to expand on that if you can.
Oh yeah, definitely. I went to CU Boulder to get my degree in media and public engagement. And I knew that I wanted to work in the conservation field, so I made my topic of study wildlife conservation issues. And it was right in the heart of the vote. It's kind of like the birthplace of ballot box biology, the vote for the reintroduction of wolves into Colorado. And that was really what my study focused on, was the media and the way that topic was being talked about in the public space, and the populations of people that were being left out of the conversation, mostly rural people. So I, I spent 2 years knee deep in that topic, and obviously they did vote to have the wolves reintroduced into Colorado, and we're seeing the effects of that. The fact that that vote went through, and they did in fact reintroduce wolves just this past year. But now another topic of conservation is up for a public vote once again in Colorado, and I don't know if you've heard of it. The move to abolish mountain lion, lynx,
Yep.
and bobcat hunting in
Yep.
Colorado. So
Yep.
it's interesting the shift between it going from being, a policy made by these organizations that were, meant to study these animals and study their populations and then come up with, oh, this is the solution. This is how we're going to balance predator versus prey. And now it's a public vote, and people who don't interact with wild spaces or wildlife on a daily basis get to have a say in that. I found that interesting. And the conversations that were had within these like within these organizations were all fairly skewed and secretive, and yeah, anyways, I can get really into the weeds, but it was very interesting and very rewarding, and it definitely made me, have a deep respect for people who are constantly fighting these policy battles.
It is extremely poignant to follow that. And separate from this show, I do another podcast called District of Conservation, where we go really full Monty into these policy issues. And this is going to be a topic, as you alluded to, that a lot of people are going to be talking about in 2024. Ballot box biology is going to become increasingly more common. But similar to that is whether or not natural resources schools, like the programs you graduated from, I've heard different chatter that some of these schools, I've heard in Virginia Tech, I didn't go to Virginia Tech, but I live in Virginia. And I've heard that some of these schools, which have been exemplary and really keeping in line with, the doctrines of hunting as conservation, fishing as conservation, I've even heard that not only in media, we're seeing in academia kind of this shift away from true conservation to this kind of preservation or removal of hunters and anglers. Is that something you're potentially worried about? Having gone through this and understanding these issues, do you worry that people coming up behind you who go through the similar ranks may not have that same educational
Oh, yes, it's
understanding?
something I'm definitely worried about, especially when you talk about the removal of hunters and anglers from the space. The talk of population. I'm sorry, I'm losing the word. The topic of, people who take care of the population numbers, right, never gets brought up. So the population is handled, whether that be by hunters or anglers, or whether it be by these, game and fish foundations and stuff. The predator population numbers have to be handled. So mountain lions that, seep into these urban spaces are either going to be removed and euthanized by a conservation agency, or they're going to be hunted in their wild spaces by hunters in order to mitigate a population number so they don't get into these urban areas. I think that I think that the human population removing the thought of, Homo sapiens as a piece of the circle of life as a predator, I think that's completely false and wrong and dangerous. Um, and I do think that it is, if you want to be if you want to be a voice in this space and maybe you don't have a hunting or fishing background, I think it is paramount that you look at the science that is being brought to the table by these conservation agencies, because a lot of the time people just look past it or don't even pay attention to it.
They take the animal rights perspective over the true conservation perspective. I actually just read a book about how to talk about hunting effectively. It's a really good kind of research-based book by, I believe it's a resource management, a polling outfit that works with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. And I was like, I need to improve maybe my knowledge, or maybe I'm not presenting everything effectively. And I've been doing largely okay, but it introduced some new information to me. And it talked about, how a lot of people are buying into this, animal rights rhetoric over, true conservation rhetoric, even though they eat meat, but don't understand where it comes from, or they maybe misconstrue how wild game meat is sourced in an organic fashion. And like you said, I grew up in California, and so we had a lot of human mountain lion contact. And I recall reading in the news, even being a teenager, that they had to euthanize mountain lions who encroached on golf courses in one community that I lived in. or they would die due to rat poisoning because of the moratorium on a hunt. So are you willing to have more be killed using and wasting more taxpayer money? Or would you rather kind of assess the trade-offs and say, okay, allowing a limited hunt, much better for the animal, but there are a lot of people who have yet to understand that principle, and I know that others outside of this podcast are looking to explore that way of messaging there. But I want to talk more about your career and your involvement in the outdoor industry. Audrey, you're a senior marketing coordinator with Remington, which is an iconic shooting sports outfit. Obviously, everyone knows about Remington firearms, Remington ammunition. I know it went through a lot of changes recently, and you also host their Remington podcast. Talk about your work with Remington and what it's like to work for such an iconic brand like them.
Oh, it's a dream. I grew up shooting Remington rimfire. Like that was the first gun I ever had. That was the first ammunition I ever used to harvest rabbits. So going from using Remington as a child to now being a part of the future of Remington, I mean, I can't even put it into words how great it is for me here. I do host the Remington podcast, and I founded it. I created the Remington podcast, and for such an iconic brand to, I don't want to use the word allow because, I think it takes a little bit away from the accomplishment itself, but having a female voice head this huge, iconic shooting sports brand, I think it's amazing. Um, I hope that it opens the door for a lot of women who are out there who think that they don't belong in the space. Um, just seeing or hearing another female or a female voice, out there kind of, championing, good Lord, us and saying, hey, we do belong here, we do have something to say. It's more than I could have asked for. So
A lot of companies I've noticed are not just doing the traditional appealing to women with pink camo, pink hats.
mhm.
They're really trying to give women a voice. And that isn't to say things have been perfect. Probably before we worked in the outdoor industry, it may have been a little difficult climb for women. But I would say, compared to any other sector, I work in politics too. I would say that the outdoor industry is a lot more open. There's a lot more opportunities to kind of break the mold and break in authentically if you have a unique perspective, if you're willing to work with the industry, push them nicely and affectionately, to be like, yeah, you got to expand the tent, and there are ways to do it effectively, and you could still maintain your brand. But I think smart companies like Remington and others realize they're not losing anything by adding more women, because women are some of the biggest purchasers of firearm and ammunition, especially since COVID. There's far more women, more than the eyes can see. And women also love, unique type of platforms like modern sporting rifles. They like traditional shotguns. They like hunting rifles. Women are now leading these decisions about purchasing firearms because they just don't feel their personal safety is safeguarded.
Right.
They're worried about rising crime. I live close to Washington, D.C. We have seen untold amount of crime. I've never seen crime in terms of the reporting to be so horrible in my over a decade of living in this metro area. It's happening all over the United States in major cities. So I got my concealed carries a while ago. I have a AR-15 rifle. I have my handgun. I have that type of stuff. I don't have Remington products, unfortunately, but I have shot Remington before, and it's a great, great product, quality product. But I know that your company, much like other companies, have seen a surge of women.
Mhm.
And so how are you guys marketing to women in terms of being like a go-to for them over competitors, let's say? Why would you guys be more unique and better for women shooters over, let's say, your more direct competitors?
Right. So in my opinion, and as a woman, I have always absolutely disliked female campaigns targeted towards females. I personally don't like the pink pistols. I personally don't like things that are like, hey, this product is separate from the male product. You should buy it, female. I have never been one to agree with that kind of approach. The way that we, I would say, approach women and new shooters is by treating them just like that. They are new shooters. I do understand that it is a target audience, and that we should be sure that there are products that women feel comfortable using. But I do not believe that they should be any different from in quality or otherwise than products that male consumers use as well. So we do focus a lot on calibers that women and men can carry. So a lot of 9 mil products and whatnot. But we also come out with a lot of we're big in the shooting sports space. We do create a lot of 20 gauge products for uh whether it be new shooters or women or children to use. We champion that space. So it's.
I have to agree with you because I feel like just dangling pink in front of women is just so unappetizing at times. Like, I like to wear pink, but not when I shoot because I want to be treated seriously. So it's good that a lot of companies, if they did flirt with it, they've abandoned that type of
Yes,
strategy
yeah.
because you could still have like feminine shape and feminine wear, but still make it so you're kind of on equal footing and treated seriously like the guys. And it's not because we have to appeal to men's sensibilities. It's more so like we don't want to be treated any less. We want to be on equal footing.
Right, exactly. We deserve the same kind of products and the same kind of respect that any male shooter should ever have.
And could you talk about some of the models that you guys are selling this year that women would largely find interesting or you want women to look out for?
Yeah, so we are actually I serve the primarily the ammunition side of things, but we are coming out with um a lot of 410 gauges that would be good for new shooters. We are coming out with a lot more rimfire if you're more comfortable with 22. We are coming out with a plethora of rifle cartridges for the new hunter, for the seasoned hunter, all of that. So I would say that we welcome women in all the spaces and in all the factors that we promote here at Remington.
Speak more to the ammunition side if you can. I would love you to touch on that.
Yes. So what ammunition, like what specifically?
Whatever you think is sellable, I think, to women, because some women may be listening, they're maybe not familiar with the different types of caliber of ammunition.
Okay.
So maybe something popular.
Okay. Yes. So if you're into shooting sports or that is something that you would like to get into, the shotgun shooting world is huge, especially here in Lone Oak, Arkansas, which is where I am based, and that's the headquarters for Remington Ammunition. We released a shot show, a new low decibel, low recoil 410. Um, and if you don't know the differences in calibers when it comes to shotgun, 410 is a very, very small caliber, very easy to transition into if you haven't shot a shotgun, right? Shotguns generally they're very loud, they kick a lot. And I think that's why people kind of stray away from them. But this product in a 410 shotgun would be perfect for any kind of new shooter or anyone who's trying to be new in the shotgun world. It's called low decibel 410. If you are shooting handguns, I personally prefer 9 mil. I just think it's easy.
Same.
Yeah, right. I just think it's easy to find. It's easy to come by. I think that it's the perfect size cartridge for whether you're using it for home defense or for IDPA, which is competition handgun shooting. Um, if you're using it for home defense or for self defense, then you definitely should look at what is called a hollow point bullet. And the reason being is that the penetration is less and it'll expand faster. So you're not going to over penetrate, shoot through a target that you're trying to shoot at. If you're trying to do plinking, you're trying to do target shooting, you need to shoot what are called full metal jackets. And they're just you can buy a lot of them and they're good for, hitting those steel targets, making that loud, gorgeous blinking noise. And of course you can always start handgun shooting. I think people like look past this. There are 22 round handguns. So if you, I don't know, maybe if you have dainty hands, my mom, for example, she is a very tiny woman. She likes to shoot a 22 handgun because it's easier for her to grip. There's also, 22 lever action guns. And we came out with these ranch hand loads this year. And personally, I would walk around with a 22, there's 22 revolver handguns. And if you work on a ranch or if you live on a lot of land and there's like, you want a way to mitigate rattlesnakes, this ranch hand load is it for you. And the guns barely kick because it's 22 and they're deadly accurate. So, um, that's pretty much it. Rifle cartridge wise, I'm a 270 girl. I know that's, like, really classic and annoying, but, all the fancy new cartridges, the PRCs, the Creedmoors, all of that, I've shot a 6.5 Creedmoor before. It's very similar to a 270 if you want, like, a newer, sexier cartridge, but for me, 270s are just, like, tried and true, and, I've shot whitetail, mule deer, elk with a 270, and it's never failed me. So,
Those are great ammunition recommendations, and I know it can be confusing even for me, someone who's shot guns for a while now. I don't get to shoot consistently as I'd like to. Sometimes I forget the calibers, and it's okay to admit that, but no, I've shot from a multitude of the ones you've listed, and they all are interesting. Some I like better than others, but those are great recommendations, I would say. Talk more about your podcast. So you started recently. I've checked out a few of your episodes. It's a great program. What is kind of the goal of the podcast, and is it specifically geared towards the ammunition side more so? And who are some of the guests you've brought on?
so we at the Remington podcast, what we do is we talk about the ammunition world, and it's all encompassing. So we talk wildlife conservation, we talk shooting sports, we take deep dives into specific cartridges that we've released. We have new release episodes. The people, the guests that we've had on, it's like a plethora. We've had influencers, we've had influencers like Josh Peck from Outdoor Limits. We've had conservation organizations like Blood Origins, Dr. Robbie Kroger, and more often than not, we'll have some kind of engineer or product line manager on to talk on the ammunition side, really get into the weeds and explain to you, why you should choose this ammunition, or, hey, I'm going duck hunting, I'm going to go stand in flooded timber, this is why I chose this. It's it's a lot of fun getting to talk to these people, and I learn a ton just being the host of the podcast. So I think that if you're trying to learn, if you're new to hunting, if you're new to shooting, I really think it's the podcast for you. If you anything firearms, we talk all different cartridges and calibers. We talk all different uses, hunting, shooting, regular firearm carry. If you want to know, hey, I got this handgun for Christmas. I have no idea what kind of ammunition that I need to buy for it. We have an episode for you. It's supposed to be educational. It's supposed to be entertaining. Um, I I really wanted to make it digestible for anyone who decided that they needed to learn a little bit more about their firearm.
It's a good listen, and I'm going to try to tune in more regularly. And it's good to see more of you on the manufacturing side produce content like this to kind of humanize the ammunition side a bit more, because sometimes people don't hear from the folks behind it and they're like, oh, they're so all terrible. And they don't want anything good for society. And it's like, no, the ammunition folks, much like the firearm folks, do care about using their products in a safe and responsible way. They talk to so many unique people. They're human just like us. So I love the fact that you guys are utilizing a podcasting space more like this. And Audrey, as we round out our conversation, you're a young lady working in the outdoor industry for such an iconic brand like Remington. Do you think it's feasible for more women to possibly explore careers in the outdoor industry, or is it a lot more difficult these days? And what advice do you have to women listening to the program who want to work in this similar space like you?
Oh, I think there is room, and I think you should come join us. We want you here. There, I can't speak to how it was obviously before I joined the industry, but what it looks like as an outsider who used to watch a lot of or consume a lot of the media that was when I was a kid versus now. I think that there's a lot more representation in terms of women in the industry at this point. And I think that there's only going to be more. I think that there's a lot of women out there who think about the firearms slash hunting conservation industry and think that it's very male dominated. And you would be correct, but there's space for you. And I mean, I hope that that's what everyone, listening and everyone at home understands is that this is a job. When I was going through college or even high school, I didn't think about, you know, media spaces and the firearm industry even being an opportunity. Um, I watched a lot of Sportsman's channel and I thought that that's all there was, but absolutely now that's not the case, especially with social media and influencers and um, you if you have thoughts and opinions about outdoor conservation topics or about the firearms industry, your voice needs to be heard and you can make it happen. My biggest advice to someone who's looking to do this, looking to work for a big brand like, Remington or Benelli or, Sig Sauer or conservation industries like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or, NWTF or Pheasants Forever, I would go to shows. So there's like a lot of trade shows that are open to the public. You just buy a ticket and walk in and talk to the people on the floor and maybe bring a business card, bring your resume. Shoot, I'm taking so many resumes from people at these shows. Um they're actually the people behind the scenes, like they're the marketing directors and they're the product managers and they're the engineers. They go to these trade shows to speak to people. And I really think that that is an in that a lot of people overlook. Um, Also, I didn't think about when I was in undergrad and I was getting a STEM degree. I have my degree in architecture, so this doesn't really pertain. But if I had known this prior to going to college, you can be an engineer and work on, ammunition. Like you're all ammunition companies have engineers. All firearms companies have engineers. Um, if you want to work in conservation, get a degree in biology. I didn't even think about prior to college what my education would have led to, and I hope people out there are thinking that now.
It's so exciting to hear someone younger than me talk about how much they love working in the outdoor industry because I feel like a older, seasoned millennial, and you probably are Gen Z, maybe on the cusp of Gen Z, younger millennial. And it's just so exciting just to hear from you and how excited you're about working in this industry. And I know our listeners will be so thrilled to hear that there is a lot of space, there's a lot of opportunities, wide open. And it's been such a pleasure, Audrey, to talk to you. And I wish you great success with the podcast and your work with Remington.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Sportswoman Show. Your support is so crucial. Take a moment right now if you can and help us out by hitting the subscribe button on your podcatcher of choice, leaving a review, sharing with your friends, and engaging with us on social media. We also need guest ideas. If you have a suggestion on a strong outdoor woman we need to talk to, shoot our producer an email at cody@troutstreamstudios.com.